over to the show Stepien of Harvey Callis Real Estate and his partner Stephanie Toufexis, who's going to be joining us to bring a different perspective than we had on the first time that I had Stefan on. Stephanie, how are you guys doing today?
Good, how are you?
Fantastic. Thank you for having us on.
No problem. Listen, we've been talking about doing this for a little bit of time now, and we've been, or at least I've been lucky enough to have gone through the process with you guys, and in about 10 days from now, we'll be closing on hopefully our forever home, and you guys were an integral part of that. And when we were going through the process, this was kind of like the first time where I was dealing with something. This is not the first time I bought a house, but I was way more involved in this process for a variety of different reasons. And Stefan, we went to high school together, and Stephanie, I used to babysit one of your best friends and used to come and hang out. And so it's funny because this was like a very different type of team that we sort of had working. We were more family rather than just, someone who's selling and buying a house for us. And so that's really what I find with the Harvey Callis real estate brand, is that you guys don't look at your clients as just, numbers or people. Like, you really get in depth into getting to know them. How do you sort of, get that engagement with people that you're trying to find forever homes for?
I think it's important for people to realize that, the Harvey Callis brand has been around for over 5 decades, and it is a family-driven business. I mean, their son, Michael, is our CEO, and, he treats us all like family members. And that's the kind of business that Stephanie and I are trying to get in for ourselves right now, is that, it's not just a numbers game for us. We want to get to be where we know everything about the person that we're working with. And, as we saw in your case, we got to have lunches together and hang out with your kids. And, it's just it's important thing, because this is such a big process for people, and we want them to make it as easy for them as possible on every end. And I think if you get to know them a little bit better than just treating it like a general transaction, it makes it that much smoother.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think for Stefan and I, we try and really back our brand, and we're so proud of the brand that we do work for. So we're so happy that we were able to help you and your wife and start this new chapter for you guys.
Yeah, it was definitely an exciting time. It was definitely, a process when it comes to both buying and selling, when it's not just one thing, but it's, it's multiple things, and looking at different and creative ways to buy as well. And I'm hoping that's something that we can sort of get into, because I know there are so many different things that you guys do, whether it's, leasing or buying or selling. Like, you guys have this huge umbrella that you guys sort of take care of under the Harvey Callis brand and real estate brokerage. And it also means that you guys also get to work with other amazing people, such as like mortgage brokers, or, again, you find very creative ways to sort of make things happen. Now, based on where we are with COVID-19, how did that affect you guys? Did it affect you the way that you thought it would, or did things sort of, change and work out better than you had anticipated?
Yeah, Stefan and I were lucky because we were pretty busy this whole time. We had to adapt our business quite a bit, and there's a lot of protocols that went into place, but we were really lucky. We were able to get a few transactions done for some essential clients, and it worked out well. And, we didn't have too many showings, but the few showings we did have ended up selling the houses, and we were lucky in that. In regards to the market, we're seeing a lot of the condo market is really struggling. We're down about 16.3% year over year, and our months of inventory is up, which means that we have a lot of inventory on the market. So there's so much available under 600 square feet. So, I mean, COVID just changed everything. I think that people's perspectives have completely changed in regards to what they want for their families. And we're still seeing the real estate market busy, because I think that a lot of people spent that time during quarantine. People had a lot of time to think, and a lot of people made changes instantly now that the market has opened back up and restrictions have been relaxed. So we're still seeing the market extremely hot, because the Muskoka market is up 800%. It's unbelievable, right? Because people are realizing that they want that space. They don't know when they're going to go travel again. They don't know when they're going to go on a trip again. So they want to spend that disposable income on something in Ontario that they can go to frequently, rather than waiting for a once or twice a year trip.
And that's an interesting thing because especially now with the climate of people losing their jobs and being on CERB, I mean, it definitely has affected things, whether it's like their mortgage rates, what people are getting approved for. But when we went through the process, I mean, the inventory of the houses that we got to see was a little bit more limited than what it probably would have been. But it also means that for those who are ready to buy, if you're ready to go and you have everything, set, you have your pre-approval, you have whatever you need, you could really benefit from, buying and selling in this time as long as you have everything sort of lined up. Now, when it comes to like first-time home buyers, I know some people are a little bit nervous about what they want to do, but there are some great like incentives that first-time home buyers are getting. Is that something that you're, trying to walk through with people and really encourage, for them when they're looking to buy a house?
Yeah, so there's a few things that we show our clients, specifically buyers, when they're going to buy their first home. We have a land transfer tax rebate, so you're looking at a maximum of $8,475 back on any purchase over $370,000 in Ontario, which we all know isn't that hard to do. So that's a fantastic incentive because in Toronto, you're paying municipal and provincial land transfer tax.
Right.
So it does help quite a bit for a lot of people. The CRA also has their own first-time home buyers plan. You're looking at least $35,000 for some people to be able to pull from their RRSPs, and it's repayable within 15 years. Oh, it's fantastic. A lot of our clients have actually used it. And yeah, we want to show our clients all of the options that they do have when they're going through the first time home buying process, because it is difficult and it is scary. And it's important that there are incentives in place to help out first-time home buyers because it is an expensive market and you want as many people to be homeowners as possible. It's great for your own equity and yeah, it's fantastic.
And that was one of the things that when we bought our first house together, my wife and I, is that, we were looking for a place to live, and we had just come out of an apartment and we were sort of staying with my in-laws for a little bit, and then we were looking to get into another apartment. We were expecting our first child, and when we were looking at it, like rent was $2,800 for like a 3-bedroom or like a 2-bedroom apartment for where we wanted. And at that point, it's like, why are we putting that kind of money into renting a property when we can start to look at something that's going to give us some equity? And we didn't think we were ready for it, and we jumped into it, and we're very happy with the decision that we made. But it's definitely, if you don't have that team or people around you that can sort of educate you in the right direction as opposed to just jumping at the first thing that comes available, you could definitely be in some trouble. And I know obviously with COVID, some people are running into that issue because of them losing their jobs or making less through CERB than they would have if they were actually working in person. And that obviously will affect something like a pre-approval, for example. What are you seeing? Do you have any clients that are on CERB, and sort of what are they dealing with when it comes to purchasing a property at this point?
For me right now, I mean, I have a couple clients that through friends of friends have called me, and, these are just simple leases, and these are the problems, right? Where, over the last, 3-4 years, it's been a landlord's market where they could control the rent and put it up as high as they want. I mean, you're seeing 1-bedrooms going for $2,400-$2,500 downtown in the core. And now you're seeing all these condos sitting vacant because people can't afford them. The issue that we're facing is that the way that you're still going to apply to get a condo under the lease process is the exact same, where they're still going to want to see your last 2 pay stubs, letter of employment. And the issue you're going to face for some of these things right now is that if you haven't been working for 4 or 5 months, the landlords are going to be a little bit hesitant to allow you to stay there because, on $2,000 a month, if your rent's $2,200, even if there's 2 of you collecting that, there's not enough money to go around that would substantiate you staying in some of these places. Right. And I think just on the bigger scale of people that have been living downtown, I think they probably expedited the process of moving into a house a little bit quicker than they would have thought they were going to. Whether it was a 2, 3, or 4-year plan, it's become immediate now. So you're seeing a lot of people who have realized now that if they don't have to work downtown or they can work from home, they're moving to the outskirts of the GTA. So whether it's Pickering, Ajax, Burlington, Hamilton, even in the areas where Stephanie and I have sold in Birchcliff Cliffside, where you've seen a 17.8% jump this year. And people would never have thought to have lived there before, but now developers are moving out there. They're acquiring properties for a lot cheaper, and they're building these beautiful homes. And now people are starting to, change their family dynamic a little bit and their mental thought process of where they want to live. And so it's changed greatly, but I feel like a lot of people they're kind of going on the fly right now, because we all are, in a sense, right? We're just finding out day by day about what's happening. And, as cases spike somewhere else, they may lower somewhere else. And so for Stephanie and I, we're still trying to just figure that out right now and trying to, make sure that we can put people in the right direction.
Yeah. One other thing I just wanted to mention is that, in regards to people collecting CERB, 18% of people that lost their jobs were actually able to afford a home pre-COVID. So the amount of buyers that we did lose through COVID, we lost that 18%, but we didn't see a huge hit in regards to buyers and sellers in the market.
Wow.
That's just one little tidbit that, only 18% of people that lost their jobs, the majority of them were people that had part-time work and they were low income earners.
Right. Interesting. So throughout this podcast, Stephanie is going to be the stat girl. She's going to throw some stats, which is fine.
She's the numbers.
Listen, numbers are important.
Put them on that side.
Exactly. Well, it's interesting because numbers are a huge part of this, right? Like, you can't just go in and say, okay, listen, I want to buy $1 million house or a $600,000 condo without really knowing the numbers behind everything. Like Stefan, like you mentioned earlier, pay stubs, T4s. You're going to have to show a lot of money now. And we realized that going through this process, that COVID really changed things from the first time that we bought a house. So the last time, you go into a bank, you get a pre-approval based on what your annual income is for, last year, and then your 2 current pay stubs. And that was pretty much it. They put it into a computer. The computer will analyze this, credit check, boom, boom, boom. You have your pre-approval. Now with COVID, things have changed quite a bit. They're requiring way more information because, people are losing their jobs or people are making less money. There's uncertainty with what is happening, what is opening, what's not opening, what's closing again. And when we ran through this, it was definitely way more nerve-wracking. Now, when we were trying to figure out what this process was going to look like, the thing that we got sort of caught up with is, when we're making offers, there's a lot of paperwork that goes into buying a house. And what made us nervous with having 2 kids and everything essentially being shut down at that point when we're starting our process is, how are we going to meet up with 2 people who don't live near us to sign paperwork to go and put an offer in? And the one thing that I think COVID did that maybe changed the game a little bit, and who knows if it's something that will continue to happen once we get to like our new normal, is signing documents on the internet and having sort of like the click to fill in this box and the signature or initial. And we found that process extremely easy and way more, accommodating, and made us more comfortable with the whole thing. What do you think moving forward is going to be the process? Are you going to go back to that way of still having to do all of that paper signing, or do you think that this is sort of bringing on a new wave of technology to, just help add to the real estate game moving forward?
Yeah, we love using the online. We call it Authentic Sign. It's so convenient. And the point of our job is to make our clients' life easy. It's such a stressful process, no matter how hard we work to make it not a stressful process. Even once we get to the point of you putting in an offer, you're stressed, you're worried, you want it to get accepted. So there's a few things that we can do to make it less stressful. And we love the online signing process because, you live, with good traffic. You live about 45 minutes away from my house, and to have to drive all the way out there for 2 initials, it's not worth it. You can be out at work. You can be, considering that this wouldn't be happening. You can be at the park. You can be anywhere in the world, and you can sign these documents. It's made our lives a lot easier, and I think that it will stay around for a long time. The future is technology, so it will definitely be around for a long time.
Yeah, I know Stefan was the one who was consistently making it out to Mississauga, even for like one-off. So, I mean, obviously there are certain things that you can advance through technology, and there's certain things that you're still going to have to do. I mean, you can do a virtual tour, but if you're looking to buy a house, you're going to have to get up and go. I mean, we saw it. We saw some places that had some decent pictures, and then you get there and it's like, what am I looking at? Like,
Yeah.
it's a completely different, thing. And, you have wires hanging off the ceiling. You have tiles that are missing. You have a room that looks like it's from Saw 4.
Rancid smells.
Yeah, it's 12 people living in a basement that you don't anticipate going in. I mean, I feel like this process, you got to see it all. But I mean, there are certain things that, technology is definitely going to advance. The putting in an offer and signing and all of that's going to be fantastic. But even things like putting in a deposit, even that has changed with the wire transfer.
Wire transfer, yeah.
Before you didn't necessarily have to do that, but now, because there is so much uncertainty, the easiest way is through that wire transfer process. What are some things that you think or you would like to see implemented through this process moving forward that you think might make life a little bit easier, even when, COVID sort of gets figured out?
I think for me, with the Authenticign, I mean, Stephanie's so well versed at it. I'm one of the old school guys who would drive to get the signature just because that's what I like to do. Because I feel like if there's a technological glitch, then it's like, okay. But I mean, for 99.9% of the time, it's within 10 seconds, both signatures, it's back to us. It's done, and it saves that time. I think I've seen some of the virtual open houses, and for me, it just doesn't work because there is no replacement of human touch and human element being in the house and figuring out how you can visualize your family living there.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing I just don't think is ever going to change. I think it's going to have to change for the, next year or so with regards to, I know they're slowly doing open houses, but it's not going to be like it used to where, Stephanie and I would go to an open house and there was 50 groups in the house at the same time.
I mean, yeah, it's not a house party anymore like you would have seen before. It's still going to be some restrictions.
Essentially, like it's going to be at a mall where you walk in there now and there's 6 foot here, 6 foot here, 6 foot there.
Makes sense.
Honestly, on my end, I don't really want to see anything change the way that it's done right now. I think that this is just bringing a certain sense of awareness to a lot of people where, like you said, something as similar as the deposit check. I remember back in the day when I was doing industrial, I went and picked up $1 million check. Yeah. Certified $1 million check. I was like, okay, here it is, right? But nowadays, as you saw, it's just bing, ding, done. It's wired in, it's wired out. And I think for you guys having little kids, and especially with the state of the way it is right now with coronavirus, this is just so much safer. And I think that just makes it easier for you guys and for any other clients. So,
I mean, one of the things that I definitely see that we benefited from because of you guys was not having to deal with banks directly, because the other process of that is going to, the 4 or 5 different financial institutions, having to book an appointment, having to bring all of the same things that you've done with every other bank before that and provide the financial statements and then have them run it. And then you're going to get different rates based on what they're going to offer to you. The thing that you guys brought was working with a mortgage brokerage, or what would Mike's company be called?
Mortgage consultant.
Mortgage consultant, perfect. So mortgage consultant, where we deal with one person who then does all of the legwork through that process. And that made life significantly easier for us because we left it with him. He negotiated. He got to work with regular lenders like banks, and he got to work with some other lenders that aren't banks but deal with things like mortgages or home equity lines of credit. And because of that process, again, we talk about taking the burden off of the customer, the person looking for it, where we say, listen, Stefan and Stephanie, you look for the houses. This is our budget. Mike is going to be able to dictate what that budget is based on our financial information. You send it once, and then you're sort of done, and you wait to hear back. That process made life significantly easier for us. And then also your knowledge, Stefan. And I'm going to give you credit for this because it's definitely not something that we even thought of before this process. And that is, again, creative ways when it comes to lending. And something like a home equity line of credit, not something that we ever heard of, not something that we ever knew of. Yep. Because of that, you bringing that to the table, it put us in a position to, for an advantage. And that's the kind of thing that you want to look for. I mean, there are tons of people on real estate. I mean, you look on Facebook or Instagram or the internet, and everyone is a real estate agent. But one of the things that you guys bring is that extra little tidbit of knowledge that I know for sure with our previous agent, who was an amazing guy, a little bit old school, maybe would not have known about those type of advantages. And so, again, I'm a big fan of the Harvey Callis brand. I mean, because I love myself some Michael, and I love myself some Goody, and, you have a great team that's sort of working there.
Right.
But because you have that sort of familial bond between you guys, I mean, you guys will bounce different things. And Stephanie, I don't want to feel like I'm shortchanging you at all through this process. I mean, if we had to rely on paperwork from Stefan, I know I would still be looking for a house as it is right now.
You most definitely would have been.
I would agree with that.
So whether it's, contacting other agents late at night or on the weekend or whenever, like, you guys really sort of brought that, you can call us at any time and we'll get it done. Now, with COVID, obviously there are, some changes that have sort of come with the whole process, but are there any sort of mistakes that you're seeing people make before they close on properties that they're purchasing?
Yeah, we always want to keep our clients knowledgeable. We don't sell, we educate. And that's something that has really resonated with Stefan and I. We want to educate our clients. We want our clients to understand what we're explaining to them. And when it comes to explaining, and knowledge also comes us keeping them aware of the specific things to avoid when you're in the process of getting your pre-approval and closing on your house. You don't want to go buy a car. You don't want to go make some huge purchase.
Right.
Don't switch banks. Don't get anybody to pull your credit. Who knows what's going to come up and it's going to ding your score. Try and stay very low from point of getting your pre-approval to the point of closing. Live within your means. Don't make any large purchases. Wait for your major purchases if you have the funds to do it after closing. Just let the bank know what's going on. No surprises, and everything should close perfectly fine.
It's funny you say that, because Mike gave me that advice, when we're waiting for our closing date, which is coming up soon. He said, one of the things that you want to make sure is that when you take on this mortgage with your new bank, you need to be careful that you don't want to do anything that's going to disrupt it, just like you mentioned. And sure enough, we're in the process of, okay, we're moving to a bigger house. So there are going to be different things that we're going to need, for instance, furniture. So we go and we're looking at furniture and we purchase furniture. And we get to this point where we max out, or we get close to maxing out a credit card. Like, we haven't maxed it out, but we're getting close because, things like couches and tables and all that kind of stuff. Like, you want to make sure that, you have your home, let's furnish it now. And so we were coming close where we almost pretty much had everything, but there may have been a chance where we could have been right up against the limit. So I called the credit card company and I was like, listen, this is where we are, we're close, if we're looking at like a credit limit increase, for instance, what would that look like? And we were 6 days away. It's funny, 6 days away from the 6-month mark of getting a credit increase. And he said, well, we can do it. We just have to run a credit check. And in that moment, I'm just having like the flashing light go off in my head. And I'm like, you know what?
Funny how Stephanie and I weren't told this story.
Oh, of course not. Because, nothing happened. So there was nothing really to tell. But at that point, I remember, I'm like, all right, this is what they told me. Exactly. I don't want anything coming up to the bank and surprising them where they're all of a sudden going to withdraw or change the circumstances of how they're lending their mortgage. So we decided to, okay, listen, we're gonna hold off. We're gonna wait until we're ready to go. We don't want to max anything out or increase anything or run any credit checks. But it's funny because if you don't give that education, and it's something simple that honestly you could forget to tell them, because in your mind, but you also don't know necessarily if your clients are going to go out and buy a new car or buy furniture or max out credit cards or look for credit limits because, they're excited or need to do these things. And you could honestly forget. But by not forgetting and telling that, you saved me from potentially running into issues. And I'm sure other clients as well, where we remember in the back of our mind when that light goes off, be careful what you're doing because you don't want to screw anything up. And so, it's really, it's important to know, it's important to have that education. And that's one thing. I mean, communication is always key. And the interesting part between you guys is that normally, or I don't want to say normally, but with previous experience, you usually deal with one person. You guys obviously are working as a team. How did that teamwork come together, and how was that working for you guys?
It's a very good question. We started at Harvey Callis roughly around the same time.
Okay.
And there was about, 5 or 6 young people coming into the office at the same time. Obviously Goody had worked there. And so we kind of all started integrating, and, we had group lunches together, and then Stephanie and I just started, bouncing some ideas off each other, just before the new year. I'd say November or December. And, I had a deal that was starting, and she came in on it. And then we kind of just, started going to lunches, and then she got introduced to one of my friends that owns a restaurant. And then we did a deal with him. And then it kind of just, and she started kind of just coming along with me, and I was joining her and other things that we were doing. And it started just organically growing. And then we got our first sale, and then it kind of just kept going. And the funny thing is that our first major deal that we got together was the first day of coronavirus.
Oh,
I'll never forget that. They're like, I remember we signed the deal and our office shut down. And I was like, oh no. But you know what? I think the best thing about us working together is that we're two very different people on so many things. I mean, yes, we're very similar with the way that we interact with each other. But I think, when it comes down to business, I do business a certain way other than Stephanie, and vice versa. But I think at the end of the day, the most important thing is that when we're both at different places, we know that we're both representing each other as how we would want to. And I think that is something that you can't fake. You can't duplicate. You cannot force. It's just, just pure and utter trust that we have for each other. We talk to each other all the time. Sometimes it's nice when we don't talk to each other. Yep. But the one thing I will say that is a great thing about having a partner is that other than being a part of the Harvey Callis brand, is that we've really encompassed the whole one-stop shop theory. Whether when you and I were just chatting about, or all of us were chatting about, having Michael and Callum Ross on board, as well as an HVAC technician, a roofer, a home stager. Yeah. All of these things that we have, and especially during coronavirus, it just alleviates so much stress for our clients, because any questions they have, Stephanie can answer the phone, or if I don't know, I call her, or if she doesn't know, she calls me, and we get the answer for the client instantaneously. Yep. So I think that's been the nicest thing about having a partner, for sure.
Shout out your camera guy, by the way.
Oh yeah, Gary.
Gary's the best.
Yeah,
Gary's the best.
Gary was like a bat out of hell. He came in, ran roughshod, yelled at me a couple times to get out of the way, and then within like a few hours it was done, and it looked completely beautiful. Now, Stefan, you bring a very interesting perspective, because in this podcast you're very polite, you're very positive.
It's because my mom is gonna watch this.
Oh, okay, here we go. But sometimes you're going to run into things. It's not always going to be rainbows and butterflies. It's not always going to be, good times. There's going to be miscommunication. There's going to be a disconnect somewhere. I'm going to throw this to Stephanie. Stephanie, what are some of the challenges of working with such a handsome man like Stefan?
What challenges aren't there? I'm looking for
Let's get into that.
Less challenging times.
Valid.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just pulling your leg. No, he's a great partner. Were you really looking for the negatives?
No, I wanted to hear your perspective of
Come on,
what your relationship
throw him under
is.
the bus here. No, look, a partnership is hard, like any relationship. Personal, work, they're difficult, and you have your ups and downs, and you need to learn each other and feel each other out and really get to know each other. And to be honest, I feel like we're still getting to know each other. We've done a lot of business together now, but the fantastic thing about having a partner is there's just always somebody to answer the phone. Always. Right. And this business can be really lonely. And I was worried about that before I got into real estate. I thought, what am I going to do? Like every day I'm going to go to the office and I'll have my coworkers and my colleagues there, but you have to keep everything hush hush, right? Your business and your clients names are all, it's a small world, and especially at
For sure.
Callis, everybody's clients know everybody's agents.
For sure.
So I was worried it was going to be a really lonely career until I stumbled across, yes, this handsome partner that I have chosen to work with. But it's fantastic. Our clients can call and either of us will answer. Unfortunately, that's a problem in this industry, is a lot of agents are really busy. You call your agent and they can't get back to you until 6 p.m. the next day.
Right.
If they can't get through to Stefan, they can get through to me. And we, yeah.
I think that's interesting because it works from two perspectives, right? If you're buying something, you always want to be making sure that you can reach your agent or agents in that matter. But if you're selling your property, you want to make sure that your agents are reachable by other people as well. And I know we ran into some of the issues where we either had questions or wanted to get into places. And I know Stefan had trouble reaching people to get information on a property they're trying to sell. And so, again, singing the praises of you guys, if it's not one person, the other person is able to, answer the call or be there and facilitate that information. Because when you're selling a property, and I'll talk from experience, it can be a little bit stressful. It can be challenging when people aren't coming to see your property, or there are tons of people who have questions and maybe they're not being answered. I reached out to somebody on Stefan's favorite app, the Realtor app, and I had a question about condo fees. And so, you go on the app and it says, email this person, and I did that. And 3.5 weeks later, I got an email back. But the funny part is the email didn't address the question that I had asked. The email was just saying, "Thank you for showing interest. What can I do for you? Please write me back."
Automated.
And I'm thinking from a customer service perspective, one, the timeline is just ridiculous. Two, if you're setting up somewhere where you can ask a question, why would you not answer that question rather than have them have to write back to you again later on? It just didn't make sense to me. So I know apps and things can be a little bit tricky, and we don't always like them because, you want to see something that's already sold conditional, or, it's actually not on the market anymore. There's so many challenging things. But when it comes to selling properties, you guys as a team use social media very well. Is that your strong suit, Stefan, or is that more of a Stephanie thing?
That's all Stephanie. My Instagram page was bad from the get-go, and she fixed it. But I think the most important thing I was just going to say just before we get to that is that this is a nasty industry. And when you have two instead of one, we can protect the clients twice as quickly, and we can go to bat for you. And you've seen it with your properties, even something as simple as, an open or someone going to your house at the wrong time on the wrong day. And they didn't know that you had kids or anything, but that's not the issue. The issue is that they went, but then Stephanie calls and then I call to yell. So now you have two of us at the same time, right? Which works in a lot of people's favors, because like you said, with the Realtor app, it's just so generic. And to now go into the social media, I think for Stephanie, the way that she's created our Instagram and our Facebook pages is not only is it accessible to send an inbox message there, but you can email us. We put our phone numbers on there. It's not Harvey Callis's phone number. You can call Harvey Callis and they'll call us right away, but it's our direct cell phone numbers, because if something goes wrong, Stephanie and I want to be accountable for this. It's not, oh, where did this go awry? And Stephanie and I are both very quick to be like, did you do this? Yeah, I did, or I did not. Okay, well, how do we fix this? And let's go through. And obviously we're giving you the nice way of how this goes, because, real estate's an ugly business. I don't want to lie to you, screaming and yelling but not on us, just at other people. And it happens. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of stress. As you saw, there's some days where, your place, for example, had no showings for 5 days. And then for 3 days, there was 10 of them.
Yeah, exactly.
So the ebbs and flows go. And I think the way that we've been able to situate our marketing, obviously there's people with much more experience than us, but I think for people where we are in our career, we've really done a great job of, showcasing what we've been able to do. And the numbers have now started to substantiate that, where we've been able to break records and sell places really quickly and use somebody like Gary to do a professional job on any size deal.
Yeah.
And I think that's the great thing that Stefan and I have been able to do on the social media aspect. So, I mean, for us, it's been fantastic on that end.
Yeah. And even one of our properties that we sold, it was in the end of May. All we had during COVID was social media because,
Right.
you know, we were worried about sending out flyers, and ultimately we just had it on the exclusive market. We didn't even bother putting it on the MLS and wasting the days on the market because we didn't really think that it was going to be busy. So we threw up a sign on the
Right.
lawn and we just tried social media. And with that specific property, we had about 100,000 individual views. So 100,000 individual people saw the property. We started about 50 conversations because I recorded everything. I really wanted to see our statistics from this. We started about 50 conversations, whether it's inbox, phone calls, emails, and we actually sold the property through one of those inquiries in 4 days on market. So we
Wow.
ended up putting it up on the market and we sold it in 4 days to a lovely couple. So it's
Wow.
incredible how social media works. And we've been very lucky. And now, we're kind of moving with social media, but as things are easing up with our few properties, we're starting flyer campaigns, sending out flyers for our just listed, just sold. You want to get your name out in these specific neighborhoods that you're selling in
Right.
because people want to see what's selling. And then even if they aren't interested in buying or selling, again, we're there for knowledge. If somebody sees, oh, that house that we did drive by, it ended up going on the market. Let's see how much it got sold for once they see the sold flyer. So they'll give us a call. And it's not always about trying to get business out of everybody. And I don't
Right.
look at it like that. I want to be there to educate whoever calls me. And sometimes people just call to inquire. Some people just want you to come by and give them a market evaluation. And that's our job. Our job isn't always to sell properties, but just to educate people on real estate so that they can make those decisions a little bit further down the road once they are ready.
It's interesting you say that because another experience that we had, not with purchasing this time, but in between when we were at our apartment looking for another home, we went to see a few real estate agents, and everyone just seemed to want to get our signature down on a piece of paper rather than really hear what we wanted. It was like, yeah, listen, based on what you're saying and your numbers and this and yada yada yada, just sign here so that this is just exclusive, that you're going to only be with us for 3 or 6 months or whatever it was. And we found it was not a great experience because this guy that we had was bully offer, going with your max budget every single time, taking us to areas that we did not want. And there's nothing more frustrating than being with an agent that just doesn't seem to get you and also doesn't seem to know what he is doing. We ended up driving accidentally on the 407 following this guy for like 15 kilometers and he took us to a house that was for another client. It wasn't
nice.
even for us.
Oh my God.
That's nice. That's the best.
That's great.
So we, prior to this experience, we didn't necessarily have the best luck. We know we're very happy with the house that we're currently living in, and even happier with the house that we are going into. But I mean, from a customer service perspective, again, the Harvey Callis Real is more of like a family style business, or at least family style approach to things, and knowing Cal, like I mentioned before, I mean, that guy is pro family, 110%. Like that guy is, he's everyone's dad. He's everyone's best friend. Like that's just the way it is. Whether it's, you're a guy on the street, a guy he's playing tennis with, or someone who's trying to do a deal, he wants the best for them. And you guys really encompass that in your business. Now, again, if we have people who want to look into these, buying or leasing or selling their properties, if you had like a sales pitch that you said, this is why we are a little bit different outside of things that you have already mentioned today, what would some of those points be that, separate you from the pack?
Well, if you look at it from just the simple perspective of what you said about the realtor.ca thing, is that people, I know people say they do get back to you, but we've seen it time and time again. I mean, I remember I sent an agent who works in the beaches 6 months ago an email, and he's a very well-known agent. I've still yet to hear back from him. And I think that I know a lot of people say that, but I mean, really it is true. And you and I talked about this on the first podcast. When you work for a family and they're your family, you want to go to bat for your family. For sure. And that's how we treat our clients. We want to go to bat for them, whether it's getting them the right mortgage approval, whether it's finding the right school district for their kids, whether it's the transit system that they need. It's not just about, and this is so important that Stephanie does remind me a lot about sometimes, but it's the education factor of that, let's think about so much more about an area rather than just the home. Because if you
Right.
have a great home in an area that makes no sense, nobody's happy.
For sure.
And I think for, on your guys' end, we got somewhere that had close proximity. The transit system worked. It was, and these things are very important to people. And, I feel like for a lot of agents, they just do the deal for the sake of doing the deal. And they want their commission and they want to leave. But for us, we want to make sure that we keep this business referral system for a long time. And it's important that, we have people like you and your wife and your kids that, respect the work that we do. And it shows in the efforts that we do put in. And that's what I think a lot of separates Stephanie and I think from a lot of people is that we're very hands-on. And we want to know everything about you guys before we make the decision, because sometimes it just doesn't work out, and that's okay as long as we can educate you. But for the most part, people get along with us, and then we get to able to actually find them the home that they're looking for, and at the end they're really happy.
Yeah. And the other thing I think that sets us apart is we're both very young, relatively. You not so much, me a little bit more. You're kind of moving to the side of not being young anymore. But we are young, and we have a young approach to our business. And we're really trying to, again, with the social media thing, a lot of the older agents, they don't utilize social media as well as Stefan and I can, and sending out Facebook campaigns and getting things sold specifically and only using Facebook. That's just one little thing that I think also sets us apart is people are nervous to use younger agents, but you don't need to. I mean, we don't have the years of experience, but when you get hired for a company like Harvey Callis, we've been given years and years and years of experience in the very short time that we've been there. And, we're so lucky for that. And we're so lucky to work for that brand. They've given us so much education, so much knowledge, and we're able to go out and act like agents that have been in the business for 5 years, 10 years, because we have the knowledge base from the best agents in the industry.
And they call, and we can call them anytime, by the way. Sorry to interrupt you, but I mean, that was the other thing I was going to say about Harvey Callis is that, like, Stephanie and I become friends with some of the top agents there. And, most of the time they wouldn't give people the time of day. Stephanie and I call them all the time. Hey, guys, what's going on? Hey, we have a quick question for you. No problem. Never a problem. They never complain. They always there to help us. And, there are certain aspects of new real estate where you're learning on the fly about certain things that only somebody with 20 to 30 years of experience would have. And then, it's a redirect. And that's the same thing about Michael, right? With Michael, you call Michael, he answers.
100%. I'm sure he does. He doesn't seem like a guy who doesn't, with as busy as he is, he still makes time for everybody, which is incredible. I mean, he is a truly spectacular man.
He is.
Now getting into mortgage rates. Now, obviously, for anyone who's been following along for the last few months, coronavirus really did a big thing and hammered down those interest rates. The Bank of Canada has gone super, super low, and it's sort of at its lowest. I think they said they're not going to go any lower. Now, obviously, you're going to look at two things like a fixed or variable rate. What are you guys seeing right now with, which one people are choosing and why are they choosing those ones?
Yeah, what I think is crazy is that the Bank of Canada went on record and said that, interest rates are going to be this low for a very long time.
Right.
Which is a great thing. And I think that that's going to save our market. We always say we don't have a crystal ball because we cannot give you any sort of answer of what's going to happen in a few months. But to see that the Bank of Canada is saying, look, we're going to keep it at this rate. One thing to think about is people that lost their jobs, let's say in March, and they're only just getting back on their feet now. The banks are really, really, really being tough on people that were collecting CERB, like really tough. Yeah. So a lot of people lost their pre-approval from just taking it for a month or two. So what this is showing us is that you're actually able to have gone through rough times, okay, but you're also going to be able to capitalize on what's going to happen in the fall because these rates, they're saying they're not changing for the foreseeable future. So if you needed to get back on your feet now, you have a few months, get back at your job, start working again, you got your full-time job back, hopefully you're making your full salary, and in a few months from now, that deposit that you had saved up, or the down payment, for the spring market, you're now going to be able to use in the fall market, which is incredible. Like when mortgage rates go up and down. Typically they're for a shorter period of time,
Right. For
but
sure.
it's going to be people that lost their job in the spring. They're still, even if they can't go out and buy now, they're going to have the option to do it in the fall. So we're seeing fixed rates and conventional mortgages in and around the low 2 and high 1 percentages, and
Right.
variable rates are at the lowest they've ever been in history, and they're at approximately about 1.8%. So it's a fantastic time to buy. And again, we're not just saying that to make a sale. It's important that people know that this is a great time, but it's also going to be a great time for the next few months in regards to purchasing property. Money's cheap right now at the bank, and it's something to really think about if you're looking to invest, or if you're looking to just get into the market for the first time, or even if you're just interested in refinancing. So many people are out there refinancing right now just because of the low rates, or they had a variable rate and they're locking it in at a lower rate.
Now, one thing I wanted to get into for anyone who doesn't know any of, variable or fixed, like give just like a quick description of what those two things mean.
Yeah, so a fixed rate, you're looking at typically about 5 years. It can be 3 years as well. But a fixed rate means you're looking at that interest rate, no change, no matter what happens to the prime rate. You will always be at your rate for the next 5 years until you go to refinance. Variable rate is an open rate that fluctuates with prime rate, and essentially you can lock it in at any time. So right now, people that had a lot of people that were on variable locked in at these really, really, really low rates, and they can lock it in for 3, 5 years, depending, but most people 5 years, and you're stuck with that rate. But this is right now, the rates are fantastic to be stuck with. So a lot of
Yeah.
people, I helped my boyfriend's mother purchase a property, and she purchased back in March. She got given a rate. She just closed, and she decided to end up moving it to fixed because
Wow.
the rate that she was offered was so low. It's worth it to just solidify it and keep it for the next 5 years, because even if they're going to be low until, let's say, maybe the fall or the winter of this coming year, they're going to have to go back up again, because the
For sure.
government and the banks are going to start to need some, once the stimulus kind of fades away, they're going to need to get the mortgage rates back up to similar to what they were before.
For sure. I mean, and obviously, fixed rate for someone who's looking for consistency and knows where they're going to be for the next, 5,
Exactly.
10, whatever years. I mean, it's obviously going to be super helpful for them to know that, okay, this is going to be my monthly payment. Now I can sort of budget around what I can spend on a house. And then, if you're variable, I mean, I know one of the benefits that we had is that because we were selling our house before 5 years of filling out that mortgage, or the penalty that we're paying is far less, right? Because if you break under a fixed rate, you're going to pay a much higher penalty. Whereas if you sell under a variable rate, the penalty is much less. And unfortunately for my wife, she only found that out because they were locked in on one of their houses and they had to sell within that 5-year period, and they had to pay a pretty chunk of money to do so. And so again, those are some things that when you're talking to like you, or you're talking to like, a Mike or something, or a mortgage, sorry, Stefan, what'd you say? A mortgage
Mortgage broker.
mortgage consultant, mortgage broker. I mean, they're hopefully telling you
Agent.
these agent, for me, Superman. Like you're hoping that these people are educating them around these kinds of things, because if you don't have this knowledge, it's hard to understand what's going to happen a few years down the road. But if you know that, this is not your forever home, education is key. Knowing the different things and the different benefits to both programs or both sets of rates is going to be super important in order for you to make the best decision and ultimately help you guys the most. Because what you guys don't want is someone calling you after 2.5 years screaming at you as to, why is this happening? And you're like, well, bozo, you chose the wrong rate. If you had told us what you wanted to do, we could have helped you a little bit more down the road. And so, it's hard. I find sometimes you have to go through some rough stuff in order to figure out, the benefits. But with a team like you, you're going to save your clients that road of going through down the hardships and experiencing those things because of the knowledge base that you guys have already under your wings. Right. What would you say? Okay, if you had to give one piece of information, one piece of like, listen, before you decide to buy a house, this is the number one important thing for you to to sort of know or understand, what would that piece of information be?
Choose your finances wisely and understand where you stand right now, because I think a lot of people will use you for example. When we chatted about this on the first podcast, is that when you have a set budget in mind, it's so important to understand that you cannot go to the brink of just right on the edge of the cliff. You need to go and give yourself a little bit of leeway, leave some cash in the bank, so that if something like this does transpire, like coronavirus, you are prepared for it. Now, we haven't really seen the downfall of this yet on our end. We've seen a lot of buyers, but we haven't seen what's going to transpire now once the mortgage deferral gives out, and that people are going to start, unfortunately, having to lose their homes. Stephanie and I, unfortunately, just dealt with that a couple of days ago, where we were under the impression that we were going to be selling someone's house, and they ended up getting a power of sale letter. And it's a sad thing to really have to, for us, I mean, it's not our money, but I mean, still at the same time, we empathize with the situation that they're in. Right. And, I would say for them, it's just, evaluate your financial situation right now and be honest with yourself, because, like you said, even for example, of buying furniture, like, okay, it doesn't seem like a big thing for you, but do you see how quickly that could escalate into something negative?
It certainly adds up for sure.
And even something that Stephanie mentioned, which was so smart, and I didn't even think about this, was something like going to get a car loan.
Yep.
And someone would never think about that. That would just never cross their mind. Like, how would a car resonate with a house?
Right.
But it all falls under the same umbrella. So I would say for that, just knowledge of your finances on my aspect, I think would be just so important.
Yeah. Another thing that just kind of follows that is just knowing your credit score. A lot of people don't really know, but you can use something just as simple as Credit Karma. You sign in, I think you need to give your SIN number, and they'll pull your credit. They don't give you a full report because you don't want to pull your credit report, but it'll just give you your score. And I don't think that it's exactly like to a T, but I think it's really close. And to be honest, a few things that you can do also to rate, like I know people are struggling with their credit score. And of course, the higher the credit score, the better the rate you're going to get from the bank.
For sure.
Another thing that just to be wary of is increasing your credit limit. So I know we were just talking about that with you in purchasing furniture, but ultimately what can drop your credit score is you even just getting close to your credit limit every month can drop your credit score. So you actually want to be able to have, like, whenever you go and you put your card in at the bank, at the teller, and it gives you an option to increase your credit limit, always take it, because it lessens the delta every month of you putting money on your card, and it doesn't raise your score. Because if you're only approved for, I don't know, $6,000 a month, let's say, and you're consistently using $5,500, it's not good for your credit health. And, worst comes to worst, of course, always just make the minimum payment on time.
For sure.
Never, ever, ever, ever miss a payment, ever. Another thing is just, last tidbit would maybe just be to make sure that you save enough for closing costs. Like Stefan said, don't get to, I can afford $1 million and spend $1 million, because what about land transfer tax? If you're purchasing in Toronto, you owe municipal and provincial land transfer tax. What about your new property taxes? They're going to be a hell of a lot more expensive with this new home that you're purchasing. If you've never purchased a home, or if you're moving from a condo out to now you're moving into an area like central Toronto, your property taxes are going to be insane. Possible repairs that you need to make on your new property. You have to factor in all of those things and make sure that you've saved enough, and make sure that when you go out to purchase, you're not spending every single dollar that you've approved for. It's always better to keep it just slightly under.
Awesome. Well, listen, I don't want to take up any more of you guys' time. I appreciate you joining me for this episode. Thank you very much. I mean, obviously, just go through your socials really quick if people want to get at you, where they're going to find you on social media.
Yeah, I'm at Stephanie Toufexis on Instagram, and you can find me at Stephanie Toufexis Real Estate on Facebook. And my number is 647-993-0328. If you need anything, call me.
Wow, we're putting out phone numbers. I like it. Stefan?
Why not?
Yeah, Stepien for Facebook and Instagram. I don't think anyone else has my name. And Stefan at harveycallis.com, and 647-523-6161.
You hear that, ladies? You have his number now. This
Somebody
handsome man.
call, please.
Okay. All right. Before we get into another episode of this podcast and a completely different topic, thank you very much for joining us, guys, for the Big O Podcast. I'm your host, Julian Ortiz. Have a great night, everybody.